is the Venturing Angler Podcast. I'm Tim Harden. In this episode, we're chatting with John Perry of Angler's Alibi in Alaska. We'll talk about fly fishing in Alaska, years and years of experience in the last frontier, and more. Let's chat with John. All right, we're here with John Perry of Angler's Alibi in Alaska. John, welcome back to the Venturing Angler Podcast.
Thanks.
So last time we talked, I think we were in Denver at a fly fishing show, and we talked a lot about Angler's Alibi and your operation up there. How long have you been in Alaska guiding and fishing?
I started in Alaska in '94 and been up there ever since. I had a 6-year hiatus from 2000 to 2006, but jumped right back in it. And have never looked back. Glad I'm still doing it. Look forward to more years for sure.
Yeah, when you, before we hit record, you told me that you'd been going up there since '94. I was surprised because I've always thought of you as a younger fella. How old were you when you first went up there?
Oh, man. So I was in my 20s. I was guiding. I got my start in Colorado as a fly fishing guide, ski patrolling in the winter and guiding in the summer, just doing walkway trips for 2 years. And then this is out of college. And then so the opportunity came to go up to Alaska, guided at Angler's Alibi, and I never looked back. And once I got a taste of Alaska, the whole fishing program, the diversity with the salmon, the trout that fight as hard as a steelhead, it was hard to come back to Colorado and think about guiding down there. So I just loved it. Fell in love with the place. Yeah.
So I guess what was it about that first experience, aside from the fish, that really took hold?
Yeah. I mean, I could tell you, my mentor, T.R. Rafferty, took me out on the river for the very first time. I'll never forget it. It's big water compared to what I was used to guiding on in Colorado. And the structure of the river where our Angler's Alibi sits is mainly a sandy tidal portion of the river. And the majority of what we do down there in that region is targeting salmon, all 5 species. And so that whole scenario compared to what I was used to in Colorado, guiding trout with basically bug imitations and dry flies and nymphs, was gonna be a complete different experience on the fly. And besides, you add in the fact that you're in this big water. It's definitely there was a humble factor for quite a while until I finally felt confident in it. But the fact that you're fishing these waters and you got to keep an eye over your shoulder for a big brown bear at all times, because they were and they still are, thick. There's a lot of them, so you'll see one almost on a daily basis on the river. So it's just a whole different scenario compared to what I was coming from in Colorado.
Yeah, and it's I grew up on the East Coast and then moved to Colorado. And so for me, I was like, oh man, this is like the epicenter of adventure. But for you, you were leaving Colorado and finding adventure elsewhere. What do you think were some of the biggest variables that made Alaska so much more exciting for you at that point?
Oh man. Obviously, we talked about the salmon. Salmon are the ones we're catching are right out of the ocean. So you're basically catching a saltwater strength level fish in a river, moving water. The tug, the pull was so addicting, and so much more the fish were just so much more powerful than what we're catching in Colorado. And not to put down Colorado trout fishing, it's amazing, it's fun. I still like to do it, but it's just at another level in gear. Um, we don't use tippet. We use pound test up there, right? And
Yeah.
it's just that whole scenario. And then even with when I got my hooked my first couple of trout up there, a 16-inch trout in Alaska compared to a 16-inch trout in the lower 48 anywhere was night and day. And the strength of that wild trout really had me hooked. I just couldn't see guiding, in Colorado ever again after that initial experience. I was just awestruck by it.
And was this in the Bristol Bay region?
Yeah, this is on the all my first experiences happened right on the Alagnac River, and then from there, doing flyouts into Katmai National Park, and just like the mainstay rivers like Brooks, Moraine Creek, um, Kulik River, the rivers like that, which are very popular, are still fished to this day amazingly well. That's where I cut my teeth in Alaska, in this area.
So you've pretty much stayed in the same place. What's made you, in general, stayed in the same region of Alaska?
Um, I guess that's a tough one. Um, Not that I want to see other places. Um, I just know that in our area, what makes our area unique is that we have, consistent, thriving salmon runs of all five species for the most part. And we have the propensity in three major drainages to catch huge trout, which really doesn't, for some reason, doesn't exist to the west where the other rivers are. They do get really nice trout, but they don't. We have the propensity to catch 30-inch plus trout, and with the amount of sockeyes and the size of the lakes on our side, they really have the propensity to get steelhead giant size, really really um, thick fish, and I just to me that's kind of the pinnacle of what we do on our side of where we are. That next cast might be that fish of a lifetime, more so than anywhere else in Alaska.
Hmm.
That's what keeps me there.
Year after year, I imagine um, things always stay exciting. It's
Yeah.
I, I've known guides for a long time. There seems to be sometimes in a lot of places a lot of monotony, but my guess is
Hmm.
that that's not really the case up there.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a little bit of no doubt there's a little bit of monotony. This is going to be this way. You know what to expect when you get there, kind of a thing. But the interesting thing about our river system specifically is that in the braided part of our river, it is um, it constantly changes. So from year to year, what might have been a really productive area might not even be there the following year because how the winter, the ice changed the channels, and the actual main flow of the river changes actually up in that area. So in springtime, our first run up into the braided areas where we target our trout, we're always blown away by the subtle changes and some major changes that have taken place over the winter and spring with the ice breakup and the new channels that are formed. And there's still some areas that have stood the test of time and are still productive areas up there, but there's always new waters and new back channels to explore every single year. So that's really that keeps it fresh for sure. And in our home river, the monotony factor isn't near as high as some other rivers where they don't have that change.
I, and there's so many other variables too. I mean, Alaska seems like a place where, you know, I guided in Colorado too, and a little uptick in dam release or something is the biggest variable that I might have to think about, unless it's like a big drought year or something. But up
Hmm.
there, I mean, even just everything seems so epic. The size of the runs, the size of the animals. I'm sure
Yeah.
that all has an impact too.
Oh, huge. So yeah, everything's magnified up there.
Well, that's
Size of the
cool.
fish, the the animals that you get to see. Now, you can get in Colorado now. We've got a much healthier moose population than probably when you were guiding there. So it's not uncommon to see a moose in
Oh, that's
Alaska.
cool.
But even the moose in Alaska are a whole nother level in size to what we see down in Colorado, the Shiraz moose. So the Alaskan moose is a great example. Not has nothing to do with fishing, but bigger bigger animals. The brown bears are bigger,
Right.
than an inland grizzly you might see in Montana. They're just the food source, the environment is just so rich, and fruitful with all the. I mean, everything comes right back down to the salmon. It's all about the salmon that are providing the base of the nutrients for everything to grow, and that includes all the foliage and the fertilizer that they create when they die. Along the banks of the rivers and streams that create great plant life along for moose. A great example. Like it just goes back to salmon being so important and vital to beyond fishing.
Yeah. When you started fishing up there, what was there a certain fish that you were most excited about?
Yeah.
I know some
Oh,
people are all about kings, some people are all about rainbows. What was it for
yeah.
you?
Yeah, for sure. Growing up in Michigan and fishing the Great Lakes, trolling out of boats with downriggers, it was always the king salmon was the coolest thing to catch because it was the biggest and it fought the hardest. Now you go to Alaska and you have the ability to catch king salmon for about a month right out your front door, and that blew me away. In those early years, the king fishing was so ridiculous. The numbers and the average size of the kings were just phenomenal, and I really feel fortunate I was able to see that, and hope that it comes back like it used to be. It's surely not there right now in all the rivers, but it's possible, and it should come back. But it's definitely the king salmon that had me hooked. And catching my first kings on fly, I was using a single hander, 11 weight sage fly rod. I'll
Wow.
never forget. Had an afternoon on a tide, anchored up, by myself, and caught and released three kings from the boat, way down near the mouth where, the water is usually too turbid to even see a few inches. But we just had a good outgoing flow. So the earlier kings that were coming in, oh, it was amazing. And to think about what I did it on, and a teeny 400 a line, and a fly that was basically single hook herring looking pattern. Um, I'll never forget that day, and that was the pinnacle, and catching the king salmon was definitely the top favorite thing to do back then for sure.
And
That's
it
what really took me.
and is that what's remained for you? Is it still the kings?
I still love to do it. Different techniques, everything's evolved, right? We're throwing exclusively two handers now, swinging flies, and still, not. I would say nothing beats that grab from a king over anything else, because you might have 40 pounds of explosive chrome on the end of that line once the hook gets set, and that's the big game species up there for sure. That's it's def and there's a small window where I think it's I would say the first 3 weeks in July are the prime time for our to do it on fly. You can definitely catch them beyond that on gear, but those are your prime times to do it on fly. And so there's just 3 weeks out of the whole year where it can be done. So that makes it special too and unique, where you can target the trout every day of the season from June 8th till we leave. You can target trout, but that king salmon window on the fly is the smallest.
Yeah, it's funny when you said 11 weight single hand. I think the last time I used a rod of that size was for tarpon.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah, and yeah, I actually have a couple pictures of that day, so they're forever in
cool.
in my not only my memory, but I have it on old actual photographs.
That's very
you know,
cool.
yeah.
When over the years, I mean, for me, I just love seeing wildlife. You know, I just mentioned to you before we started that I try to go in the Yellowstone once a week and photograph wildlife. And so for Alaska, for me, I feel like I could go there and fish one day and photograph the rest. What what's your experience been like with wildlife over the course of almost 30 years?
Oh man, um, everything's been positive. Definitely a few scary bear moments. Uh, but right away, the first thing I think about is all the different bear encounters, from literally like having a bear in camp multiple times, and to being on a river, wind blowing, hood up, rain sideways, and walking really close to a sound cub that are hunkered down in the alders, and doing a Michael Jackson moonwalk, backing away, and having the customers that are following me like a train, backing up, going whoa, whoa, whoa. Having a mama bear snap her jaws at you is something you'll never forget. I don't care what you do. When they're that close, maybe a rod length away. So
Wow.
um, yeah, there's definitely some close scenarios, and then coming around blind corners and being face to face with one, at maybe 10 feet. You know,
That's
that's
close.
yeah. I guess the funniest story I have about being really close to a bear. We were at Brooks, which has got tons of bears, and my aunt was with me, who came out, and she's not much of an outdoorsman, and she she wanted to fish with me for the week, and she definitely set the record at camp for fishing the least amount of hours. But we had a great time, and on this particular flyout we did to Brooks, we were joking about how bad the bear's breath must stink because they're eating all these salmon, and lo and behold, I have a hold of her wader belt. She's in front of me walking up to this trail on the bank, and I'm holding her through this deep, slow moving hole, making sure she's stable, and walking her up. And the grass parts on this trail that we're starting to walk up to, and here's a bear. And so my aunt and this bear are approximately 4 feet apart.
Oh my
And,
God.
and I'm like, after I pulled her back, and the bear looked down the trail both ways, and then just started ambling down the trail. And I was like, whoa, that was the closest I've ever had an encounter with a bear. And we were once we caught our breath, I was like, how did his breath smell? Because
Yeah.
she was that close. So it was a true foreshadowing.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's incredible.
yeah,
And
yeah.
and generally these bears, aside from the sow situation, are fairly indifferent.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. There's so much food for them, and there is daily. They see humans daily, so it's not like it's totally different than an interior bear. So they have a ton of food. They know that humans aren't a food source. They know that primary food source is the salmon for for the summer, and it's more like you're just a nuisance to them. I guess would be the way to put it. Like you might be in their way, so you make sure you get out of their way, and all is peace.
Right.
Yeah, it's just not nothing you want to ever push the envelope with, for sure. They still need to be treated with respect all the time, for sure.
And I've heard alternatively, like, um, in some areas of like Alberta, for example, where there isn't that salmon food source, and their need for food and the way they see others is it could be different. There's, you know, need to be more cautious in environments like that.
Oh, big time. Yeah,
Yeah.
even in Yellowstone and Glacier National Park, those bears are a whole nother animal, completely different. Even though genetically the same bear, um, having that salmon food source and a giant food source, that it is, it makes a huge difference on how the interaction with humans is, takes place big time.
Right. Um,
Hmm.
I didn't realize there were a lot of moose where you are.
Yeah, we have definitely have our moose. I mean, they're not a daily occurrence sighting, but we definitely have moose um, in our area, and it is definitely one of the cooler things to see during the summer because they're so big, and to see a big bull and to get close to a bull, if they're on the side of the river and you go past them, you can turn your motor off and drift back down river, and they really won't spook. Now, once hunting season starts, it changes quite a bit. They definitely, like all big game animals, they kind of seem to know. But the which is in September. But when you see a big one, you can drift the boat right next to them, and they usually don't spook too much from it, as long as you're being quiet. And you can get some great photos. But they're definitely there, and we have some really big bulls in our area too. This past summer, we found a a shed, not a shed, but it must have been a kill from a big bull that was. I mean, we have no idea how it died. It could have been a wolf, could have been old age, could have been, we nobody knows. But we found the whole carcass, and the antlers were just starting to get they were starting to decompose and get nibbled on by squirrels and whatnot. But the width of that antler rack we found was 78 inches.
Gosh,
It's massive. Yeah,
that's
that's
wild.
yeah. Yeah, massive.
And just being there gives you, I'm sure, so many opportunities to see spectacular things.
Hmm. Oh
Um,
yeah.
for me being in Yellowstone all the time, like,
Uh huh.
I was there last week and I tried to find some bull moose and there were zero bulls, but the day before at that time there were five. And then the week before that, I saw two big bull moose and they had
Hmm.
just been fighting, but they weren't anymore, and that seems to be so much of what, chasing wildlife is, to be in a place where you are like that. You
Yeah,
just,
timing's everything. Yeah,
yeah, and you're just always timing it well, probably because you're always right in the heart of it.
yeah, definitely. It's so hard. Like yeah, to see a moose is never a guarantee. The customers coming in and are excited about that aspect of the trip to Alaska, which most are. Most people are really into seeing wildlife in as well as the fishing. And we definitely get a handful of people that could care less and just want to focus on the fishing. But I'd say that by far the majority are really into taking a break, when those moments happen, and maybe even leaving a fishing spot to get down and get a picture of, a bull moose that we think is going to cross the river, or even occasionally a wolf sighting happens, and we'll hop in the boat and try to get up, try to intercept and try to get a picture of a wolf, and that's even more rare.
Yeah,
But
that's cool.
definitely something that happens, but you can never say, oh, well, you're going to see. Come to my, come to Anger's Alibi. You're gonna see wolf, bear, moose. The only thing I can guarantee is a bear.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's a whole different ball game. It's the other animals.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. Last week, not to keep switching back to Yellowstone, but last week I saw deer, elk, and um, deer, elk, and bison. But the week before, I saw deer, elk, bison, um, wolves, mountain goat, bighorn sheep. It's crazy what a difference a day
Hmm.
makes, and to be able to see a wolf up close, that would be pretty amazing.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and those kinds of those Alaskan bull
Hmm.
moose. I mean, geez. Um, some say I've heard people say they're more concerned about moose than bears.
Yeah, and they definitely injure or kill more people than bears do every year. Mainly in mainly in the Anchorage area, or one of the major towns in Anchorage where they're spending the winter. It's easier for them to get around where there's pathways and whatnot, right, amongst their food sources for the winter. But yeah, definitely there was a window in time where there was a wolf at Brooks, and I wish I knew the dates. I want to say it was around, I think it was 2007 at Brooks. There was a wolf that was feeding amongst the bears. It may have lasted a couple years, but that wolf, we were in the upper river above the falls fishing, and I heard something behind me as I was netting a trout. And here's this wolf that pops out like a pet dog. And he's looking at me like, "You gonna let me have that trout, or what's going on?" And I was speechless. I just couldn't believe that this wolf had habituated that much. And anywhere else I've ever had a wolf encounter, they are ultra spooky and want nothing to do with humans. In close proximity, they may hold their distance and not hide, but to be that close to a wild wolf was that was mind blowing. There was no altercation. I was able to release the trout, and he kind of ambled off, in frustration. It seemed like reading him like a dog.
Oh wow.
But that was a crazy year. We got some really good photos. I should say we back then I thought they were really good, but they're grainy as hell, and it's a shame we don't have those images like with the technology you have today. Because
Right.
we had the wolf would be standing in the background. I'd have an angler with a trout on, so I positioned myself so I could get the wolf under the bend of his rod in the background. And I look at those pictures, and you can barely tell it's a wolf. It might as well be a rock in the background.
Yeah,
But if you could only have the technology we have today to
that's
snap those photos, would be incredible.
that's true. The
Mm-hmm.
That's got to be this. That type of interaction with a wolf has to be how this process happened of us being so close with dogs, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah, like
absolutely.
here. You are doing your thing. The wolf is doing something similar.
Hmm.
If you'd given that wolf that trout, then maybe you would have had a buddy for a few weeks.
Yeah, but it probably would have created a little bit of an issue with the rest
Yeah, and I should say, in case
of
anybody's
it.
listening who's not like thinking that through,
Yeah,
that's a bad idea.
right. Yeah. So,
And
but,
then are there a ton of eagles? What else? What else is up there?
eagles, osprey. Watching the osprey feed. There's a lot of them for sure. A lot of waterfowl species. Um, we usually see some harlequins every year on the river, which are a pretty cool looking sea duck. Um, and they're a rare sighting. Um, but we usually see them every year. We have otters, river otters, which they're pretty big and they're fun to watch. They're very shy as well, like a wolf. They don't like to get too friendly, at least on our river, or too close to the boats and whatnot. But you'll see them, and if you turn your back and leave a salmon out on the fillet table, it might not be there when you get back.
That's funny.
Uh, but we definitely have the river otters, and they're really fun to watch. And they just kind of bob their heads up and down, like they kind of look like bowling pins coming up vertically out of the river as they drift down the current. They kind of like they poke up, they look around, and right back down. Or like I guess that game in the arcades called Whack a Mole, I
Yeah,
believe it's called.
yeah,
They kind of pop up like that as they go down the river. But they're an early morning sighting kind of thing. Usually don't see them during the daytime, but and then evening, late evening, and then we have beavers galore. Lots of beavers, big beavers. They look like brown bears, small little baby brown bears, and they have fooled me a few times coming out of bed. Oh, there's a cub. Oh, wait, it's a beaver.
Oh wow.
And um, yeah, I really can't think of anything else right now on top of my head, but there's definitely a diversity of wildlife.
It
Oh, there's some mink too that are also,
cool.
you'll see them running the shoreline and trying to get, uh, we have these bank swallows that come in and they migrate. They're one of the longest migrating bird species in North America, and they're in our river, on the river, for about a little over a month, and they nest in these high sandbanks, and between the fox and the mink, I think those are their two primary predators. And I have seen a brown bear go try to climb the sand wall and try to dig into these nests before, but I think the mink are probably the best at it. But that's their main predators. So yeah, those are a couple of things we see too.
And before getting back to the fish, you did say you've had bears come into camp.
We have had bears come through camp, and they have they have they've never, knock on wood, they've never even thought about going near a guest tent, or bothering a guest or a staff member. What they do is they go right past the grill and they go to a gray water hole, and they're attracted to that gray water hole from the sink. That's their main target. And when you catch them and you put a flashlight on them, they take off immediately like a dog that got caught where it knows it's not supposed to be.
Interesting.
And they're never really big bears. They're what I call the teenage bear class, which is a 3 to 4 year old bear that's been weaned off from mama bear, and they haven't uh, they haven't established that fear of man, or like they kind of like know where they should be and where they shouldn't be. But I've never once had a large bear in camp, being an issue. And even when it happens, we used to not have an electric fence around camp, so we have an electric fence around the entire perimeter right now. It's been that way for years, but before we had that fence, it was very common.
Right.
Now it's very uncommon, but um, it's just it's a farm fence, electrified farm fence that keeps them out.
That'll work.
Yeah, it works.
Yeah. And so getting to your operation, it's a fly-in operation, is that correct?
Yeah, it's a flying operation, and our hub is King Salmon, which is about a 25-minute float plane ride away. And so our guests come and go out of King Salmon, and hop on a float plane there and shuttle into camp. We're there for a week.
And you guys are operating, is it May to September?
We run late June through uh, third week of September.
And then are you up there in May just getting all set up and everything?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep. Actually, yeah, we start late May and do our setup, try to get. There's a lot to it. I don't want to bore you with that, but getting all the fuel, a good stock of the base of all our proteins in the freezers for the whole summer, and it's there's a lot that goes into the spring. Stock in the shelves kind of thing before the season starts. But we have to load up our freezers with all the proteins, all our dry goods. There's a lot to it because you're basically running, a fishing camp and a restaurant at the same time, because you're providing meals all year long. So there's a lot to it logistically.
It, you said you don't want to bore me, but there's entire TV shows about.
Yeah, yeah,
Is that like painful for you to watch when you turn on, Discovery Channel or
yeah,
whatever it is, and it's like a guide operation? Just
yeah. And I've been approached 3 different times from different producers that want to do, because Alaska, there seems to be about 20 different things on Alaska shows right now, and I just don't see it ever being a positive outcome. Because it seems like all of these shows, they want to give the element of drama. So there's this scripted thing. Let's see what happens on the next episode. Will the float plane make it in with a full load of gas? Whatever drama they want to create. I'm like, it's pretty easy to do.
Yeah.
But in reality, there's not a whole lot of drama. It's just things might not happen on the hour or on the day that they're supposed to. I guess that's the most frustrating thing about running the business on the logistics side up there is, we'll get our fuel when the weather lets a boat get from Naknek all the way through the bay and up our river mouth. There's 2 days out of the week that we can run fuel. And you just got to get used to running it like scenarios like that. And rarely do things come in on time, and especially from COVID, deliveries on food and produce has just been a little bit tougher. Put it
Yeah.
that way. Yeah.
Yeah. I was actually producing a fishing show in the months after quarantine stopped.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I had to like pull permits and stuff for filming, and I felt like that could have been a show too.
Mm-hmm.
There's some drama there. It was tough, but
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it definitely has entertainment value, but I would think that eventually they would start creating the drama and scripting things. That's what it feels like when you watch those
oh yeah,
shows.
someone should just make one that's over the top, like
Yeah.
fights and like romance and everything.
Oh, trust me, it happens. I'm not the only lodge owner that can talk
That's
about it.
true. That's true.
Oh man, running the lodge, owning the lodge, and having the staff chemistry work through the whole summer harmoniously. I don't know if it's ever happened where it's just been perfect. I can't say it's been really bad, but there's always some kind of drama. There's always some kind of tension, whether it's amongst the guides, whether it's amongst the cook and the camp hand or whatever. Getting that perfect employee scenario, basically, because you're on a remote island. The way I look at it, you can't go home at night. You can only go to your, you're still there. So it's a whole different ball game on trying to get people that want to be there and are, but also are really good people, if that makes sense.
Yeah, one common theme I seem to hear, and maybe this is too much of a generalization, is that you can have like this great team set up, and then there's one person who won't like clean up or who sleeps in, and then all hell breaks loose.
Exactly. Yep. Yep. It's exactly that happens all the time. So and so is not doing their fair share. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's never ideal. It never
Yeah,
is ideal.
and then there's the domino effect after that. Yeah.
Mhm.
You mentioned the 11 weight and the teeny lines.
Mhm.
And then at some point I was talking about the monotony sometimes of guiding in various places. You guys, when I was talking about that, I was thinking about bears and all sorts of other exciting aspects that keep things, lively. But you've been able to be up there through decades of gear innovation, and I'm sure
Mhm.
that's had a huge impact on keeping things exciting up there year after year.
Oh, absolutely. It's always evolving, and we used to when I first started guiding up there um, in the early '90s. I mean, I think the reel at that time was an able reel. They had a beautiful cork drag. It tended to be a little temperamental if it's stuck or
Yeah.
whatnot. But there weren't a lot of main reel manufacturers, and I still love that product. But now you open up a fly catalog, and there's probably 30 disc drag reel options now. In one catalog, just for example. There's so many options now. There's and they keep trying to make the rods better and better. And for the most part, my humble opinion is there's not a whole lot they can keep making them better. It's more like just to appease the consumer. But there's some old classics that I still love to throw from the back in the day. That still they didn't need to be improved on anymore after that point. I feel
Right.
from the '90s. God, the G Loomis GLX, and I don't know, I'm gonna go talk about brands, but that GLX fly rod to this day is still one of my favorite rods to throw. I think it's just ideal.
It's such a great rod. I've
Yeah,
used that. I don't know. I don't think I've ever owned one, but when I'm on like a flats boat and someone has one, like, that thing's sweet.
hmm
Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
no, it can sling it, and yeah, I was able to get my hands on a 9'6" 7 weight, and I will not let anybody touch that except me.
yeah.
There's a few rods in my quiver up there that I just won't, and that's my mousing rod. That's specifically what I use it for, because that it turns over a mouse. I can, mouse have a lot of wind resistance, and if I'm going to have a window to throw it for a few hours, that's the rod I'm throwing.
That's cool.
Yeah.
D-
But anyway, definitely I would say our biggest change that we've seen in the past several years is the evolution of the spay rod and the spay lines and the technology there, um, for both salmon and trout, and how much easier it is to cast a spay rod versus what it was like 20 years ago to pick one up and find the sweet spot and cast the line properly. That learning curve is way faster now to put in someone who's never done it before and teach
yeah.
them how to spay cast.
I'm no spay expert by any means, but it seems like it's become way more accessible. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe it's with these, Skagit lines and stuff like that, but it seems doable, and it gets to a point where you can pick it up so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like last winter, there were a couple days where I just sort of needed a break, so I went out and cast a spay rod in the Yellowstone, knowing my chances of catching a fish were pretty minimal on those days. But
Mm-hmm.
I like casting a spay rod, so that was
Mm-hmm.
you're almost there just for that. But
Right.
I guess if you're in Alaska, you're also going to be catching fish on top of it, so
Yeah.
that's pretty
Oh
cool.
yeah. Yeah. It's really cool, and honestly, if you're gonna if the we've been swinging flies on the single handers, in the early years, and for chum salmon, holding chums in the sandbars and pink salmon, and you're fishing the swing, and even some of the trout fishing with the flesh flies. I never even tried it back in the '90s and early 2000s, but with the evolution of swing for salmon, started evolving into, hey, let's bring the spay rod on this fly out and swing some flesh. Everybody's fishing egg patterns, beads, and follow behind with a flesh fly, and you're still going to catch fish on that swung flesh fly. It is
Yeah,
so fun, and to feel that grab versus watch an indicator go down. To me, I'd rather catch less fish on that swung fly than catch more fish on an indicator any day.
yeah,
That's just
yeah.
and I'm sure I'm not alone in that, you know, that joy you get from feeling the grab on a swung fly. It's a special deal.
Are you guys using spay rods a lot for trout?
Yeah, we are not a lot, but we are using it more and more. It seems that more and more people want to try it every year, and more guests are booking in, um, that are spay anglers already, and also they're bringing up their spay rods. We provide all the gear at our place as well, so I have a quiver of camp rods, spay camp rods for everything as well, from um, 5 weights for our river system up to 10 weight king spay rods. We've got it all, and I've just been adding to that every year because of its popularity. And um, a lot of our summer and our home waters were swinging for chum salmon at some point through the day, and people love to do it on a spay rod. I would say more so than a single hander now, just because of it's less effort, and with that spay rod, you really get a lot of lift and fighting power off it too. You're landing these powerful fish, so it works well. A lot of sore shoulders and elbows on a single hand with very little soreness from a spay rod.
That's right. Yeah, that's the great thing. It's almost effortless, especially if there's wind
Mm-hmm.
and other variables.
Yeah.
y- you've spent so much time over such a period of time up there. How would you describe the state of fisheries that you're familiar with in Alaska? You know, over the course of, I guess now it's been a generation, right?
Right. I, I, I would say, I would say as a whole, the bright spots are we have a thriving sockeye population, which is the number one numbered salmon that in mass numbers that comes up and percolates all the all the high mountain rivers and lakes, and then that therefore nourishes those ecosystems. So we have a great trout population right now in Alaska. It's as good as it's ever been from my window of time that I've been up there. It's as good as it's ever been the past 4 or 5 years. And so I feel like we're at a really good point in that cycle. And obviously our sockeyes are not huge sport because they don't chase flies. They don't, they're not biters. You have to floss them. That's a whole nother funny story. When back at my first few days trying to learn that the hard way, but the sockeye are great. The silvers are pretty good, no doubt about it. The silvers are holding on. And our pink salmon seem to be doing fairly well. But they're all important. The only downside from what I've seen from when I started in the 90s is the kings. The number of adult kings we see return to the rivers is not anywhere near what it used to be. We still get a lot of kings, but we get a lot of jacks and we get a lot of teeners, 15 to 18 pound kings. We would rarely see those before. They were always 25 to 35 pounders in our river. And now you're hard pressed to get a 35 pounder for one in a week. If you were, it's night and day, the difference. And I'm not alone at saying this. It's not just our river. It's all the rivers. And so that's one of the downsides. What's going on from when I started. And our chum population suffered a big hit in 2020, and they still don't know to this day what caused that. But that was statewide, and I believe it even happened over in Kamchatka.
Hmm.
Nobody knows what happened, but the bright side of that was that in 21 and 22 returns, they were pretty solid.
Okay.
In fact, last year's was even better than 22. So hopefully it was a fluky, oceanic, who knows what. I have some theories, but warm water blob, was it, could it have been something from the Fukushima that,
Oh, yeah.
possibly? I mean, I'm reaching, but no one's come up with a legitimate solid answer. So, there's a lot of possibilities there, but nobody knows. Nobody knows.
Hmm.
So I mean, as a whole, I think we're really lucky to see and be living up there at this point in what's going on with the trout and during the summers. And, as far as the sockeye coming up, that's an amazing spectacle to see right now with our returns and how many are up there. It's amazing.
So you said it's June through early September.
Mm-hmm.
It's I'm sure it's not always the same, but what generally are the seasons within those seasons for
Right.
fish?
So June 8th every year in Bristol Bay is the opening day of trout season. So there are no salmon yet that have come back to the rivers to spawn. So you have this small window in the summer where trout are actually looking up. They're eating dry flies. They're eating mice. They're eating swung leech patterns. They're even hitting dead flesh, swung dead flesh stuff like ginger bunnies and stuff like that. They'll still hit um, the dead flesh stuff. But that to me was what we call the trouty part of the season, where there's no salmon, and we're actually doing, we're fishing trout more like you would in the lower 48. And there's a lot of customers over the past that have been up there to fish during the spawn time. And sure, there's a lot of fish, and they're definitely easier to catch. They're more concentrated. But I've had customers in the past several years that want to come up earlier and do the reverse and actually see Alaska rivers with no salmon in them, where it's just the trout and the grayling. and we're just doing, the actual trout flies and, bugs and, the natural things before the salmon get in there and turns all Alaskan.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's definitely the early season. And then the salmon start coming in right towards the end of June, first part of July, and the sockeyes just start pouring into the river systems in Bristol Bay. And it takes those sockeye a long time to start spawning. They're not spawning to that last week of July, and then through the entire month of August, even into September. Some of the last rivers they spawn in, but so they run. Those sockeye are running through. We even see them in early August. They're coming in chrome. Little sprinkles. The majority of the run's over, but those late August new arrivals, they're not spawning until late September. So, and you will see them in some of the rivers, mainly like the Kulik system up in there. That's probably one of our latest spawning rivers. But so we have as those new sockeye come into the river in July, it kind of messes up a little bit. There's a little bit of change of the guard on where we're going to catch our trout. You'll pull up in some areas and they're not going to be there, and they seem to get pushed out. Or either that, or they also want to jump on that sockeye train because they know that that's going to be their food source. And you will see trout in the migration of the sockeye as they're just ambling upriver. You'll see sockeye. Oh, there's a trout, and he's just like in that same migratory stupor that these sockeye are in, moving upriver, and he's going up, or she's going up to feed on the spawns, and so there's that awkward time in July. There's still good trout fishing, but it definitely gets a little mixed. And then that first week of July, where our kings are coming in, we're rolling. We're targeting kings, targeting sockeye as a means of, if people want to harvest salmon at Anglers Alibi, we only harvest sockeye. We do not kill any kings, not even a jack. We want to see those numbers come back, and we want to do whatever we can possible to, as sportsmen, to get those kings back in the way it used to be. So we feel like a negative impact to kill any kings whatsoever. So then on our river, mid-July, we have the chums start coming in with the kings, and that adds a whole nother part to the day, so to speak. We might want to take a break from king fishing and stand on a sandbar and swing flies for these hot chums. It's my favorite time to target them. For some reason, those earlier chums seem to fight the hardest out of any time of the year that they're coming in, because they go through mid-August. And those early run chums, though, God, they're hot. They jump many times. They break rods. You'll see your backing. It's a riot, and they hit top water. So if you get them in shallow water and there's not a lot of wind, they hit a top water pink, basically mouse pattern, and that's pretty awesome to see. And then once August starts, all focus pretty much shifts to silver salmon as the trophy targeted salmon species. And now we're going on flyouts, not doing the trout things. We're going on flyouts. We're almost exclusively fishing behind spawning salmon for the rest of the year. So we're fishing beads. And now, as what I've learned over the last several years, swinging flash flies even during this time. Like I said, you're not going to catch as many, but that's definitely works. And the fish, the rainbows that hit those swung flash flies during the D drop, or the egg drop, excuse me, they're hot. They're not. You don't catch a sluggish one for some reason.
Right.
If they're willing to come after that swung fly, 9 times out of 10 they're going to be hold on. That kind of fish that you might not land, because they're going to be airborne and doing all the wonderful things that Alaska trout do. And that's the first parts of the fight. They're in the air. Good luck.
Yeah.
But and then as we wind down, we don't target our last 2 weeks of the season. We're back to just trout, and we're fishing trout and grayling. But dry flies aren't a thing anymore. The mouse works a little bit, but we're really splitting the day up between drifting egg patterns or swinging flesh flies. And we're just using those last 2 weeks with we only take 6 casts and diehard trout guys, and we're going for this big jumbo trout. That's our mission. And they're there. We call them tankers.
That's cool.
The tankers live, yeah. And after they've been eating for so long, they get giant.
Nice.
10-pound plus rainbows, that class.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
So that's our season, kind of.
that's
Look forward to the start, and we look forward to the finish, and love every part of it. It's constantly changing. So going back to your thing about monotony, when things start to get a little monotonous, there's a new thing, there's a new game in town, or there's a new species, or there's a new area to go start fishing that's starting to turn on. So it's always changing. So it's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. And I'm sure, it's always a welcome change and transition, and then people come up with different levels of excitement about different fish. That's always going to make it fun, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. It keeps the guide staff, from getting burned out too, because things are changing, and we got to, and the game's changing from week to week almost. So it works out really well.
That's great.
Not only for the guests, but for the staff too.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, over the years, I've enjoyed watching what you're up to through photos and video and much more. Where can folks go to see and learn more about your adventures up there in Alaska?
They can go to our website, anglersalibi.com, and there are right on the homepage. We have a movie that's currently filling up a spot on the homepage. It was made by Captains for Clean Water, and it's a 30-minute movie. It'll take you to Vimeo, I believe, and that movie right there is really awesome. It follows one of our guides, John Landry, my most senior guide, who, by the way, is getting married next month in Costa Rica. But it follows him through his trials and what he's dealing with in Florida with clean water, and trying to get a handle on the red tides down there. He lives in Southwest Florida and Fort Myer area, and what he deals with down there in the winter and spring with their water issues. And then in the other part of that movie is what we're dealing with in our area with Pebble Mine. And we're almost there. We almost have permanent water protections. It's so close to being finalized, but fingers are crossed. I don't want to jinx it. But that's something we've been fighting since the early 2000s, was this proposed gold mine, hard metal mine sits on the north shore of Lake Iliamna. So that movie right there is on our homepage. And then through the website, you can also go to the video page and see other videos that are on Vimeo. Some amazing drone footage shot by our own staff, John Landry, Russ Owen. We've got some amazing imagery from drone shots. And that's where they would go.
Cool. And your social media is good too. Folks should follow.
Yeah, on Instagram we have a page. It hasn't been we haven't been adding to it lately, but we will be adding to it some more. We've been saving some stuff. John Landry's very, very involved in the photography end, and he's got some stuff that he enters into contests. He's actually won a contest with Yeti they had last year. He's very humble about it. You wouldn't know unless you had to dig it out of him. But he won a photo contest with Yeti as an amateur, and he's going up against his pros. But I have some footage from him that I'm dying to put on social media once he's done with it. It's amazing. Some great moose shots, like we were talking earlier about the wildlife. We've got some great, amazing moose shots this past year. Some bull moose walking in the water with a mirror image thing going on. And obviously some aerial views of the sockeye migration. Just some really cool stuff. And nothing really captures it better than that drone to really get a grasp of how many fish are actually in the river. So at every cast
Yeah.
during our season, there are times where, your cast might be swinging past, 50, 75 sets of eyes. yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, in the only way, some of these sunny days in the lower river, we've over the years captured some incredible footage of that.
Well, we'll keep our eye out for more there, and I
Yeah,
do encourage everyone to check out those videos because they are outstanding, and we always put them on the Venturing Angler because people dig it. So, John, thanks for coming on again, and I say we do another one. I'm always interested, and it always gets me amped up to go back
absolutely.
up there. So,
Absolutely. This is the only second time I've done one, but I think about questions and tangents I could go off on, and there's so much to talk about. Yeah,
well, let's do it again, and
definitely can do it again.
yeah, and thanks for coming on, and stay warm. We've got this cold front coming in.
Yeah,
It's a good time to watch some fly fishing videos.
exactly.
All
So
right.
look forward to the next time, Tim.
Thanks, John.